and I loved it.
Let me fix that.
Okay, you ready, Miss McCarty?
I'm ready when y'all are.
Go for it. You're on.
All righty. So this subject that I'm going to talk about has been a cloudy subject for a lot of people. You know, it's about, we call it codependency. I had never heard the word codependency until I went to treatment in LA in 1985. You know, everything starts on the East and West Coast and moves toward the center, and Texas is the last to get the info. With the internet, I think it's a little better now. But anyway, when I got to treatment, everyone was co-ing someone. They'd say co-alcoholic or co-sex addict or co-this, co-that. And in the treatment center, they did talk about codependency. And so that was just the early, I mean, I'd never heard the words. And then came back home and actually put in shades in 88. And then there was a book came out called Facing Codependence. My friend, Dr. Ann Worth in Dallas, told me about her friend, Pia Melody, who was actually, she met when she was in treatment. Dr. Worth met her, and their stories are out there. I'm not breaking any confidentiality. But what Pia did is she went to treatment for her alcoholism. But she said that when she got there, she realized that there was so much more wrong with her than just her drinking, that she wasn't just a low bottom alcoholic. But she did have the disease of alcoholism, but they were not addressing anything beyond the substance abuse. And so she went back to the Meadows where she worked as an RN, and her husband was the director. He's since passed away, but he was the director. Well, her husband, Pat, had grown up. There are some people who grow up in healthy homes. And he grew up in a very healthy home, had healthy parents, had good guidance from his mother particularly. And he started talking, well, Pia would interview Pat about what it was like to grow up in a healthy home. And because she hadn't, hers was, she came from a very dysfunctional home. And so this book really came out of those interviews with Pat and then other people that she would talk to about that had come out of healthy homes, because it was all foreign to her. She didn't know what it would be like to grow up in a healthy home. So Pia is the one that gave us more of an explanation of how we get set up for codependency. And I know, you know, we start acting out codependency in our adult life, that it starts in childhood with I don't know of anyone that suffers from codependency that it didn't start in their childhood. And so I'm going to go over a little bit about what codependency is, and all of you that's on here know what it is. There's a lot of definitions for codependency, but it's, you know, simply getting your feelings outside yourself. You know, when we feel bad, we try to get our feelings from someone else. That's codependency, depending on someone else to make us feel good. Oh, there's my friend Nancy from San Francisco. Good to see you, Nancy, or see your name. And then another one is, this is a big one, doing something for someone else that they should be doing for themselves. Now, there's a difference between being caring and being codependent. It's good to care for others, but a good codependent can see when someone needs help before they even ask, and they'll rush in and take over a situation when they haven't even been asked. So it's doing something for someone else that really the person could do for themselves. And this really, when you're in a relationship with any form of an addict, This is what can be dangerous, is when you take over the jobs of an alcoholic or an addict or an eating disorder person. And that's what codependents do. They want to make the addict's life easier. And so they start taking care of them in ways that is not helpful for either one. And so what it does, it makes the addict dependent on the codependent. And you know what I always say, an addict gets addicted to a substance, a codependent gets addicted to the addict. That is pretty simple. An alcoholic, any substance, you know, that is, we get addicted to the substance. A codependent gets addicted to the person. Now, if you live in a home where there are both of you are addicts, then you'll have a double whammy. You know, that either way, it's about doing something for someone that they can do for themselves. Even children, we can get so codependent on our children, on our parents, on our, you know, I mean, anyone. I could, in the past, I could have got addicted to that, codependent to a tree. I mean, it didn't matter. I wanted to help them and take care of them. And so, you know, it's about letting children do what is age appropriate for them to do. When you rush in and take over their duties, like, you know, do their class, their homework, yes, it's okay to help kids with their homework, but when you get in there and do it or for them, or you you know, volunteer for everything at school just so you can be with your baby and where you can take pictures of your baby, you know, that is overdoing your parenthood. It's about back off and let children be children and let children make their mistakes. We've got Miss Jenny here, and she's got two darling twins, and she's expecting another little boy. And I know Jenny well enough because she's an educator plus a parent. I have a feeling that, and I haven't been around you, Jenny, but I have a feeling Jenny is a good parent in that I think it starts with her being a good teacher, because we have to allow children to do what is age appropriate for them to do. When we run in and take that away from them, we're saying, you don't have enough sense to do this, let mama do it, you know. And so if a 2-year-old can put on their shoes, let them. They may put them on the wrong feet, it doesn't matter. They will finally figure it out, you know. Let them choose what they want to wear. Anyway, so I want to get back to what are some of the signs and symptoms of codependency. And, you know, it's about not loving yourself. It is a big deal. When we don't love ourselves, we find somebody outside ourselves to make ourselves feel good. And then excessive reliance on someone else, always having to have someone there to, you know, make you feel better, or these are extremes. We all need people in our lives. I don't want you to hear that we don't need people. People need people, but it's a balance. It is a balance. And so when we have that excessive reliance on someone else, it puts the pressure on them. And so when you're in a relationship with a healthy person, both of you are healthy, it's a give and take, a give and take. One day you may need something for them and they're willing to suit up and show up for you. And the next day you can lean on them. It's not so cut and dry. Okay. And so it's how you behave in a relationship always, and I don't like the word always, and we are told not to use it in therapy, but it's usually when you'll put someone else's needs above your own. I'll give you an example. My mother was addicted to the drug alcohol. I was addicted to my mother. I became her mother at an early age. I started taking care of my mother I loved and adored my mother. She was like my child. And then she began to depend on my dependency. And she taught me, I mean, I learned that I wasn't anything unless I was doing something for someone else. That's where I got my good feelings about myself. I became a human doer instead of a human being, and I would do things for people that they surely could have done for themselves or didn't even ask me to do, because that becomes, that behavior, becomes a habit. Like we say, what we think is how we act, and how we act becomes a habit. And then that habit, what it does, it becomes our character, or who we are. So when we just keep continually in this behavior, then we become codependent. So it's imbalanced relationships where a person enables another person's self-destructive behavior. It's where mother would set it up at a drive-in grocery store. I was 10 years old. She would call the little grocery store. I would drive the 2 blocks at age 10, 2 blocks, and the man, I'd pull up out front, and the man would bring out the beer that she had ordered, and I would hand him the money. And so at an early age, I learned to do that, to do things that would enable another person's addiction. And then when we marry, we go toward what's familiar. I wasn't going to ever marry an alcoholic. I married me too. And so I carried on that same behavior in my marriage. It was like I got a second chance when I married my husband, that we were together 51 years. And that I never got my mother sober. I never, and of all the things I tried and the many treatment centers I put her in, I never could get her sober. She did not want sobriety. Now, she lived to be 87 years old, but she really never lived. She breathed in and out till she was, oh, there's Karen. Good morning, Karen. So I never got my job done. And I was not going to marry an alcoholic, but like I said, we go to what's familiar. And I married a man that really needed me to help him in his alcoholism, because he had a business. And that's how he made the living, was going to work. And I did everything for that man. I'm embarrassed by it. When our first child that we had together, our first child was born, he would come up to the hospital. He didn't know where he kept his socks. He didn't know where the cup towels were. He didn't know where his shorts were, because and I'm embarrassed at this, I had a house full of kids. I had stepchildren that we were raising, and I would lay out his clothes of a morning like an invalid. And so consequently, he didn't know where anything was, I did everything for the man. And that's how I got my good feelings about myself. And then I took it on myself to sober him up. And that did not work at all whatsoever. And thank God I found Al-Anon in 1968. But it was 14 years before my husband ever had a desire to get sober, before he ever went to his first AA meeting. It was like God had to get me out of the way before my husband wanted recovery, because I literally, every time, and I had people in the program telling me, because I'd go to open AA meetings, I would go to Al-Anon meetings, I was seeking help, and it finally took, but it took a long time. But they would tell me that I was keeping my mother and my husband 1 inch away from recovery. About the time they would get ready to hit a bottom, I would feel so sorry for them. They were so sick, and I'd rush in and I'd rescue them. And then most of the time they'd be in a blackout. They wouldn't even remember it. I'd clean them up, change the sheets, powder them up, make them smell good and all that. And the next day they wouldn't even remember how they got to bed. It was my mother when I was a child, and it was my husband as an adult. Although I continued to take care of my mother, every time she'd call, I'd drive 165 miles to her bedside. I would drop everything. I'd pile my little old kids in the car, and here I'd go to see about mother. And she would be drunk, and she would want me to move in with her. She wanted, anyway. So going down this list, it's a person who plans their entire life around someone else. That's what codependency is. When you plan your day around someone else, plan your life around someone else, it doesn't always have to be an addict. Usually that's where it shows up, but it's about, your plans don't matter. It's what someone else's plans matter. I see this a lot with ministers' wives. Their whole life revolves around the minister in the church. There's a lot of codependency in churches, and there's a lot put on ministers' wives that is, in my own personal opinion, is not their job to do. And they become so codependent on the church, and also codependent on their, helping the pastor, and where they a lot of times have no life of their own. They're not an individual. So another one is one person in relationships needs the other person. Now, I've already said this, and the other person needs to be needed. When you need to be needed, that spells codependency. When you get your good feelings about yourself outside yourself, that spells codependency. Now, it doesn't mean that we can do, that we can't do something nice for someone and feel good about it. But, when I was a young bride, I started taking myself to church when I was 8 years old. And I would notice that they would take food to people and all. So when I moved to Abilene, and I'm kind of embarrassed to even share this, but I was such a caretaker. Now, keep in mind, I had a house full of kids, but I'd get the paper of a morning, and I would look, and if there's anyone on the south side of Abilene that had died, whether I knew them or not, I mean, we belonged to a church by then, but whether I knew these people or not, I would take them a casserole, or I'd bake a pie. Of course, I'd eat the first one, I have to take another one, but anyway. But I would do that, and that's how I got my good feelings about myself, was doing for other people. And I would expect something in return, and that's the kicker. Codependence, we do all of these things, but then we want something in return, and that is love. And we have a string attached, codependents do, to what they do. There's a lot of people on this screen that I know personally do for other people. They are good sponsors. They, work in helping professions. That is their vocation. That is their job. Now, when we work with sponsors, we don't do that for free and for fun. You know that? We do that so we can buy ourselves another day of recovery. I mean, and sometimes it can just look so holy that we're all that we're doing. And it is. I mean, we do want to help others, but it's to assure us another day of recovery. That's the reason we help someone else. Otherwise, we're all ever addict of any sort. We're all so wrapped up into ourselves. It is a self-centered disease. And, we're also wrapped up in ourselves that we make a poor package sometimes. And so codependents try to get out of themselves and do for others because they don't like themselves. They do not have that inner love for themselves. So another one is a relationship and which a person has low self-esteem and a strong desire for approval, is an unhealthy attachment. We'll attach ourselves to people. They have nothing to give us. They have nothing to give us. And we will attach to them expecting something back. And then we stay disappointed. And so codependency is an emotional and behavioral condition that affects a person's ability to have healthy relationships. So I can go on and on about the symptoms of codependency, and I'll give you a few more. This is what not to do. I'll give you that in a minute. But I want to tell you what Pia Melody gave us. And when people read her book, they say it's complicated. It is. Pia is an RN, and she writes in signs and symptoms, and she's very wordy. She puts too many words, but you can study her book, and I would recommend this to anyone facing codependence by Pia Melody, because what Pia gives us is it is set up in childhood, and it's set up in childhood from any form of childhood abuse. And that childhood abuse is any form of sexual abuse, emotional abuse, intellectual abuse, physical abuse, and spiritual abuse, religious abuse. Anytime a child has experienced any form of childhood abuse, we get set up to be codependent. And so I want to go through this very briefly. What happens to us when we live in dysfunctional homes, and it doesn't all have to be alcoholic homes. Any dysfunction will do, where a really combination is where there's a work addict. Let's say the father's a work addict. So the mother has to step up and overdo. So there you have an overbearing mother, an overdoing mother, an overbearing, an over-effective mother, and an ineffective, one over-effective and one under-effective, to where, like a work addict, let's say it's the father, he gets up and leaves of a morning, goes to work, gone all day, maybe into the evening. And so the children don't get a lot of fathering. Being a sperm donor is not being a parent. Fathering, mothering is hands-on, work. So let's go through this very quickly, and I'm going to simplify it to where this is how healthy, normal, natural characteristics of a child. We're all born valuable. Do y'all believe that? We are born valuable. When we are put on planet Earth, we are valuable little bitty babies. And guess what? We're vulnerable. And, all of our needs come from outside ourselves. Everything. As children, all of our needs come from outside ourselves. So we're vulnerable. And guess what? We're born perfectly imperfect. We are perfectly imperfect little children of God. And then guess what? We're dependent. We have needs and wants. And like I said, they come from outside ourselves. And guess what? Children are born immature. They're not born as grown up. So that's how the natural characteristics of a child. And if you're born healthy enough to be born into a healthy family, parents know this. Parents have, because their parents knew it, and their parents, and this is passed on from generation to generation. They teach children as children. They treat them as children, and they teach them age-appropriate behavior and how to act and how not to act in an age-appropriate way. But if you are born in any kind of dysfunction, particularly alcoholism is a biggie, because you've got an absent parent when there is alcoholism or work addiction or eating disorders. When you have either parent, but particularly a mother, all into the food, they don't have, or I didn't have a whole lot of time for my kids. I spent a lot of time with my kids, but I was always hurrying where I could go hide and eat something, or hurrying and getting them in the bed so I could get my stash out of the trunk of the car. So anyway, let's talk about these dysfunctional traits that kids pick up when they're born into dysfunction. They grow up feeling less than or better than, one or the other. If you have more than one kid, you'll have one of them that feels less than and another one that is put up on a pedestal. And you'll have one, they'll either be real vulnerable and everything hurts their little sensitive feelings. They just take on everything. Or you'll have one invulnerable where nothing bothers the kid. They just put up a wall. And that's how we are. This is how we are as adults. This is how we have survived that childhood. And then we survive by becoming bad and rebellious or good and perfect. And we see them and coming out of the same families. It's almost like they get together and say, okay, you be the bad one, I'll be the good one. We see it all the time. And then we'll see one, they'll say, okay, I'll be the mascot, I'll be the joker of the family. And then there'll be one that says, I'm not going to do any of this, I'm just going to get lost. And they'll get lost in the family, and they get lost in school, they get lost just about in any environment that they wind up in. We can tell when we get a lost child into treatment. You know, when we have a bunch of clients, used to when I'd be over there all the time, and we'd do staffing on Thursday, and we'd be all through with staffing. And we'd just be kind of kicking back, shooting the breeze. And then all of a sudden it would dawn on us, we had left out a client. That would be the lost child. They get lost everywhere in every environment that they are in. Okay, so another one is two dependence, where they cling to, you've seen these kids where they cling to their mothers. And a lot of times the mothers want them to cling to them, but they get too dependent then in their adult life, and then are anti-dependent where they're needless and wantless. This is in our adult life where we can do it ourselves. Thank you very much. Or we become very extreme, immature, chaotic, or we become over mature and become controlling. Majority of people who identify as codependents, that is, we call it the big C, that is the biggest problem with codependence, is controlling. Any of y'all agree with that? Shake your head. Any of you suffer from control? It's like you have a fear of turning loose of control, because what will happen is you learned in that childhood, somebody had to be in charge. And a lot of times it was the kids like me. I mean, I was in charge, and I was in charge when I got married, and I became so controlling. And I didn't like it, but it's like somebody had to do it. So, thank God, through a lot of recovery. I don't believe I am controlling. I'm sure I could be, but anyway. So I want to tell you how this shows up then in our adult life. One thing is we have a problem having healthy self-esteem. That is a big one, healthy self-esteem. Now we might have healthy self-esteem in some areas, but usually it shows up on the job. It'll show up in the family. It'll show up for the in-laws, just about everyone, if you don't have healthy self-esteem. And then having problems setting boundaries. The two things that are most important if you want to recover from codependency, you must have some healthy self-esteem, knowing where you stop and the other person starts. And then the other one is how to set healthy boundaries. You cannot not recover from codependency if you don't learn those two things. How to have some healthy self-esteem, how to esteem ourselves, because this is where parents esteem their children. That's where children get their healthy self-esteem, is through parents who have healthy self-esteem. They pass it on. And if you didn't get it, you don't have it. That you can grow into that through working the program, I promise you. And then healthy boundaries. We become boundaryless, where we don't have any boundaries. And then on the other hand, we will become boundary violators. Well, I would abuse my children's boundaries. I had no idea what a boundary was until I got into some recovery. So we become boundary violators as well as not having any boundaries. And then we have a hard time owning our own reality and knowing that we're not perfect. There is a real deal with codependence. Somewhere along the line, we get to thinking that we have to do things perfect. And when we don't cut ourselves much slack. We just don't live in reality. And then we don't take care of our own adult needs and wants, because we're too busy taking care of everybody else's needs and wants. And then we will fail to take care of ourselves. I was thinking this morning, I got 100% of my self-esteem from my children, how they performed, how they looked. And we had little stair steps, kind of like Jenny has little stair steps. We had our children close together. I'm glad we did. And I would spend all week planning on what I was going to dress them in on Sunday morning. I had 3 little girls and then a little boy that was the oldest one. But my oldest daughter, Karen, I don't know if she's on here, but Karen she never wore, can't remember when she started wearing the same dress twice to church, because I was always buying her new clothes. Then we'd hand them down, but I bought them all new clothes. And then I'd take them to church and they looked like they stepped out of a bandbox. Bows in their hairs, perfection. My little son would have some kind of a hat. He'd have a 3-piece suit on and a handkerchief in his pocket. They looked like dolls. And people would be lined up there where we parked, up under the awning, waiting for the McCartys so they could see the kids. And I loved that. I loved it. That's what I lived for all week, was to get those compliments from my children. Now here I'd be over here weighing 270, 280 pounds. I had 2 old dresses that I could wear to church, and I'd had them cleaned so many times. They were slick. And I had a pair of old shoes that had the leather worn off of the heels. And so when I'd walk, I'd go click, 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 and the taps were, anyway, they were worn out shoes and worn out clothes. But I'll tell you what, my kids look good. And I worked and strived for them to look good. And that's where I got all my good feelings about myself. Then I carried it into school, where I had high expectations for my kids. I stayed home and took care of my mother, and I did not go to school much. I stayed home and took care of her, and I vowed my kids would never miss a day of school. They had to be, running fever and really sick. They talk about how many times they would go to school feeling bad because I wouldn't let them stay home. Because I did not want that stigma with them if they missed school a lot. That was hard on me. In the 5th grade, I was a smart kid. When they did those IQ tests in Odessa, Texas, they called Mother and me into the office one day, and the superintendent was there. And of all the kids that had been tested in Ector County, I had the highest IQ. Now, why they would tell a kid that, I don't know. And they don't do that, I'm sure, not anymore. But I had a very high IQ. But I didn't go to school enough because I stayed home and took care of Mother. In the 5th grade, and I was driving myself in this old pickup to school every day, but in the 5th grade, and I would get all the mail. I got mother got a letter from the school, and I read it, that they could not pass me to the sixth grade. It wasn't about grades, it was lack of attendance. And I went up, drove myself up there, and I was this fat little girl, but I drove myself up there, and it was after school. I missed school that day, but I drove myself up there, went straight to the principal's office, had that letter. I was in the fifth grade, and I had so much shame about not being passed to the sixth grade. And so I talked to him about how my mother was sick, and I stayed home with my mother. And that man was very overweight. I don't know if he felt sorry for me or what, but anyway, I started crying, and I told him, that I had made up my work. I'd done the test, I'd passed the grades, but in the state of Texas, you have to go to school so a number of days in order to pass. That man passed me. And had I not gone up there and in my own behalf, I would not have gone to the sixth grade. And that is not age appropriate activity for a child to do. That is not what kids need to do. And so in my own adult life, then it was hard for me to take care of myself. I would take care of everybody else. And then it was hard for me to see my own imperfections, to see that I had limits. I mean, I could do anything in my adult life. I could move furniture. That when I was big pregnant, I took on every volunteer job you can imagine. I was superwoman, and it was only to get my internal needs met, and they never did. It really never did. So then again, this is difficulty taking care of our adult needs and wants. I wouldn't. I didn't take care of myself. I wouldn't go to the doctor on a regular basis, but by gosh, I got my kids there, and I got my kids to the dentist every 6 months. And then another one is being able to express our reality moderately. What that means is be able to express our own feelings. And I had two ways to express my feelings. I would shut down and get quiet. I was very shy and bashful outside the home. People half the time didn't know what my name was. I'd go to Al-Anon meetings. It took me 6 months to tell them my name. I could not utter a sound. I was so shy and bashful. But when I got inside that home, I found my voice, and I became a rager, and my children got the bulk of my rage. I am not proud of that. So, that came out of my own childhood. My father was a rager. That came out of my own childhood. In our adult life, we don't know how to regulate that. I didn't until I went to treatment, and I went to 20 million 12-step programs and did everything everybody taught me to do. And what I got through the 12 steps was parenting, not reparenting, but parenting. I had never had any parenting. I didn't have a set of instructions. That's why I took to the steps so much, because it gave me an outline of what to do. Then I had a sponsor that would give me an outline of what to do. And she would have expectations of me finishing assignments. That's parenting, folks. And I got parenting through the program. And so let me tell you how, if we don't get help, let me tell you how we parent our children. And this is what Pia has come up with, is we can't esteem our children in a healthy manner. We either overesteem them or we talk down to them. We don't know how to give our children healthy self-esteem because we don't have it ourselves. And then another one is we transgress our children's boundaries. We say things to our kids, or I did, y'all probably don't. Anyway, we do not teach our children healthy boundaries, and we abuse their boundaries. I did it over and over and over. I don't do that today. Thank God I don't do that today. And then we don't allow our children to have their own reality and to be imperfect. How could they when I wanted my kids to be perfect? I'll tell you what, y'all all know Kim. And Kim taught us a lot. She made the decision, and kids can do this early on. She made the decision she wasn't going to buy into my being a staff sergeant. And she became her own person, and she became our acting out child. And it nearly drove me crazy because she wouldn't mind me like the others did. And I think the others did it because they were scared of me. Kim wasn't scared of anything or anyone. And so we need to let our kids be who they are and be perfectly imperfect children of God. And then we have problems nurturing our children in a healthy way. Because of the sexual abuse in my childhood, I was bound in the turn. And then my mother it was a form of sexual abuse. She'd want me to lay in bed with her. She'd want me to hold her, all of that stuff. And I made a decision. I was not going to do that to my children. So guess what? We do the opposite. And I didn't hug my kids a lot. And I would hug them, but I had so much fear. I didn't want them to think that they had to hug me. And consequently, I raised my children at arm's length. I was there every second of every day, but I raised them at arm's length. Because I didn't know what healthy nurturing was. And I've learned today with boundaries, if you want a hug, go ask for it. And if they say no, that is about them. They just don't want a hug today. It's all about boundaries. And that's what we need to all teach our children. And then, what we do with their children is we fail to establish a very stable environment. My kids did not grow up in a real stable environment. Now, it looked good on the outside. And our house was spotless, and it had ruffled domestic curtains on the windows, red geraniums out front, an American flag. We did all the community stuff. We looked good. We were the model family. I was selected Woman of the Year one year. People did not know what went on inside our home, but our children did. And, I tell my kids this all the time, that I'll spend the rest of my life making amends to my children by mending my behavior. I'm not the same person that I was raising my children, thank God. So there is change. There is hope for change, but you've got to get help. And sometimes that means, yes, it means going to Al-Anon, Codependency Anonymous, good therapy. Don't just go and sit and talk about the problem. Go to where they do experiential therapy, where you can absolutely, involve all the senses in your body. And also, you may need inpatient treatment. Codependents need inpatient treatment. A severe codependent needs inpatient treatment sometimes worse than the alcoholic does. And they're harder to treat. There is nothing any harder to treat than a codependent, because they will come into the treatment center and try to do their own treatment. But they're lovely to work with after a while, when they begin to let their guard down and know that they don't have to do everything for everyone. It is a relief, and you can almost hear them let out that sigh of relief. So let me tell you what is some things that you can do for codependency, because this is how we get set up to be codependent. And then in our adult life, we act out the codependency. So what not to do is don't lecture or preach to your wife, husband, parent, your kids, your neighbors. You don't have to be the voice for everyone. Don't lecture and preach to them. The 12-step program is a program of attraction, not promotion. And I say this with a lot of humility, in that when my husband did go to his first AA meeting, it was the same building where I've been going to open AA meetings in Al-Anon for those 14 years. And in his story, and people told me later, I didn't go, it was a closed meeting, I didn't go. But he said he got up there and he said, I don't know what all my wife has gotten up here, but I want what my wife has. That is the ultimate of a compliment that an alcoholic can give an Al-Anon. I want what my wife has, because he says she is a changed person. I needed to change. I had a lot of room to change. So don't lecture and preach. Don't have a holier than thou attitude, better than. Do not make threats you won't or can't carry out. Do not make threats. If you get drunk one more time, I'm leaving you. Make promises and keep them. Do not make threats, because they will push. I mean, if you're living with any kind of an addict, they will push that to the nth degree. Don't scold about the past. Don't bring up the past. If you're living with a loved one that's in recovery, leave the past in the past. It's their job to work on the past, and it's your job to work on yours. And if they relapse is can be a part of recovery. No one ever has to relapse, but it does have, every addiction has a high rate of relapse. So if you are in a relationship with a child, a parent, a spouse that relapses from a substance, don't argue with them. Don't argue with that person while they are using. You get yourself to a meeting, you take hands off, you give them the best letting alone that they've ever had, and let the binge play itself out and go take care of yourself. And don't make an issue over treatment. If you have a spouse that's gone to treatment, it's none of your business what they got in treatment. Don't badger them. I was cleaning out some stuff the other day. It's been quite a while ago. And I found a whole notebook that my husband brought home from treatment. And I kind of flipped through there and I noticed a 4-step. I just slammed that book. I so wanted to read every word of that notebook. And I thought, that is none of my business. That was his work when he was in treatment, and it's none of my business. And it isn't what people do in treatment. That is their business. Now, they may want to share with you, and if they do, have a listening for them. But don't prod them and what'd you do there? Because when they first go home, they don't know what they got for treatment. It comes later, because it takes a while to get back into daily life. And number one, don't assume, don't take on a martyr-like self-pity attitude. Self-pity is one of the most deadly feelings that there is. Bless my heart. Bless me, bless me, bless me, another, pour me another drink, or pour me another milkshake. Self-pity and codependence can get into that self-pity mess. And so many of your codependents also have food problems, not all of them, but a lot of them. They'll be over here, maybe they're married to an addict, but they're over here into the food. So this is all about having to look at ourselves. Don't expect an immediate 100% recovery. If you live with an addict of any sort, and I don't care how long you're together, don't expect 100% recovery, because and by the way, it's their recovery. And if you're into your own recovery, you take your eyes off of them, and you're in your recovery for your own codependency, you'll hardly notice what they're doing. You don't have time, because you're working with the sponsor, you're going to meetings, you're writing your own inventory, and so it takes, but don't expect immediate recovery. And don't be jealous of the recovery. That's one of the things why it's so important for codependents to get some help, particularly if they're married to or have a child or a parent that's an addict of any sort or an eating disorder, once they get into recovery, if you're not going on the journey on your own path, you'll get jealous of their recovery. You mark it down. You'll get jealous of the time that they're gone to meetings. You'll get jealous of the telephone calls in the middle of the night or any telephone calls. You'll get jealous of that they don't need you as much as they once did, and because that they will get, you will be two separate people. But if you are married, that coupleship will have a chance to begin to come together when you get the addiction out of the middle of it. So addicts, if you're married to an addict or you have a child that's an addict, get prepared. They have mood swings. And, our mood swings go from one end to the other. And it can do that in the same 30 minutes, particularly in early recovery. And don't be a doormat to that. Don't lay down and be a doormat. You might do a confrontation, but give them a wide berth, give them a good letting alone while they're into their mood swings, and don't try to protect them. Don't overprotect an addict, and don't push anyone but yourself. So here's some things to do is do forgive. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It's about being willing to give up the hurt. There's a lot of hurt when you're living with an addict. And even when you're living with an addict that is not drinking, but they're not going to a program, that is worse because, they are what we call a dry drunk. They're not drinking, but their behavior is horrible. So do forgive. It's you may not be willing to forget everything, but be willing to give up the hurt. Learn what you can about the addiction, regardless of what it is, whether it's alcoholism, sex addiction, eating disorders. Educate yourself, get yourself educated about the addiction that your family, your loved one has, because then you will better understand what they're going through. Unless you have the addiction yourself, there's no understanding personally, but you can educate yourself about it. And then develop an attitude to match the facts. Once you learn about addictions, treat an addict like you would someone with any other disease, and that is with dignity and respect. Dignity and respect, because it is a disease. It's not a moral issue. It's not a sin. It's a disease. Talk to someone who understands. Get your own help. Talk to a counselor or talk to an alcohol therapist. Talk to someone who can help you understand the addiction. And that goes for eating disorders too. Take a personal inventory of yourself. We can get just hateful and mean when we live with any sort of addiction. And we have to take our own inventory. Do be willing to go to treatments yourself, go to a clinic, a treatment center, go to Al-Anon. Take care of yourself and learn about, because like I said, when we marry someone, we pick them out across a crowded room, and it usually reminds us of one of our parents or both of our parents' traits combined. We go toward what's familiar. So you might, if you really get bad in codependency, give yourself the favor of coming here and doing a 4-day or going to inpatient treatment or going to Al-Anon and all of that. Maintain a healthy atmosphere around the home. One of the best things I did early, I'm taking up all the time, early in recovery was I started playing music in the house, and was when my kids were little, and I didn't play cheerful music, but I played cheerful music, and I tap dance for them in the kitchen, and my kids thought I was crazy, but they loved it. All right. Encourage new interest. Find something that both of you can do together. Take a relapse very lightly. Don't get, if there is a relapse, don't get all balled up into it. Pass your knowledge on to others. This is what you'll do in Al-Anon. Be honest with yourself. This is a big one. Mind your own business. It's hard for codependents to mind their own business because we're busy minding everybody else's. Take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. Do self-care. Try to relax and take it easy. You know, Tuesdays are Misty and I usually go out and we do errands, and I mean, it's usually a busy day, get nails done and all of that. Well, it's cold here. It was really cold and rainy yesterday. Misty's been having a hard time working and some travel and all, and I've been tired from working 2 weeks. So we ate lunch, and then I have 2 easy chairs here, and we sat down in these easy chairs. And about 2 o'clock, we were both sound asleep, and we slept till Karen and Kim came in at 5:30. We took a 3.5 hour nap. Give yourself that pleasure. Now, don't oversleep. Take it easy. But if you find yourself wanting to sleep all the time, that could be depression. Play. Get outside or somewhere. Find something that you enjoy doing. Play. Show that you want a way out of the misery. So I know I didn't leave much time, but if y'all have questions or comments, I gave you a lot of information in a short period of time, and most of you have heard all of it. So any of you have a question or comment, just raise your hand. Who would like to? All right, Karen.
Hi, Tennie. You too. Thank you. Here's my question. When you were mentioning earlier about find a therapist, I think you said something like find a therapist where you can work on all 5 senses, or body, mind, and spirit. What did you mean by that?
Well, somebody that doesn't just do talk therapy. Talk therapy can be good as far as it helps us to get our story straight, but sometimes it helps us to stay stuck in our story. You know, find someone that has other modalities like EMDR.
Got it.
Our empty chair work. And a lot of therapists do that today, but I will tell you the reason they don't is because it's harder work. It's harder work than just sitting and listening and, you know, so that takes care of it. Does that give you an answer?
Yes.
All
Thank
right. You. Who else has something to say? Come on now. Do I have any codependents up here? Where are you in your recovery? Cora, where are you?
I'm much better. My codependency is mostly with my children, and it was very uncomfortable for me at first to back away, turn them over to God, give them to God's care, and not try to control them and what they're doing. And that letting alone, which you taught me to do, was very uncomfortable at first, but I'm much better at it now, and it feels good. It feels good to just let them do what they need to do and be there when they need me, instead of me trying to control their life and their outcomes.
Has it freed up any of your time?
It has. It really has. And, you know, at first it was so uncomfortable, and I think I'm never going to be able to do this, but, you know, practice makes perfect, although I'm not perfect. And it really feels good to just give them, like you told me, a good letting alone, give them a good letting alone. And when they come to me, especially my oldest son, when he comes to me, I'm there for him, but I don't feel like I have to control or orchestrate, or more importantly, ruin my day because he's having a bad day.
That's good. That's because that's what codependency is. We take on their bad day.
Absolutely. And I do my daily readings. I do the Pia Melody book every morning. I read our Melody Beatty book every morning. And that reading on codependency does help frame the day. So that's been really helpful too. And I'm not perfect at it, but when I get to the point where I feel like I'm starting to regress, I know what I need to do. I'll call my sponsor, I'll call another trusted person and talk it through and take that pause before I do something like my old behaviors. So I'm working really hard at it.
Good. Well, we teach people how to treat us. So you taught your children, I'm here for your every need.
Correct. Mhm.
And we do that because we need to be needed. You know?
Correct.
And then so you're teaching them a different way, and it's hard for everyone to learn. And if we don't, then you're teaching them to carry that on into their adult life, or to go find someone that will be a mother to them. You know, when we marry, they don't, you know, we don't need to be anybody's mother, or we don't need to, you know, have someone to be our father, you know.
I think
So,
the best gift we can give our children is the gift to live independently, especially when we're not here anymore for them. And that's what I remember when I go to make an action where I'm trying to control, or if my son calls me and he says, Mom, I feel stressed, I feel overwhelmed, I'm having a bad day. My response now is, that's normal. And what tools are you going to use? Are you going to exercise? Are you going to call a friend? What are you going to do when you feel that way? You know, try to give him tools instead of trying to fix it, which I
Have you
can't
ever-
fix it.
ask him to go to, have you ever recommended going to Al-Anon?
For me or him?
Both of you.
Well, I go to Al-Anon. I do the Zoom meetings and they're very, very, very helpful for me.
Have you ever asked him to?
I did not, but I can. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, just because there's a friend Joseph there, he could tell you some things about going to Al-Anon. Is that right, Joseph? Thanks, Cora. Good to see you.
So good to see you. Happy I could join.
Bethany and Rebecca.
Oh yeah, I can talk about Al-Anon just a little bit, I guess. I know something about it. When you were, the whole talk was amazing, and I was thinking that I've been, the last few years I've been volunteering with this organization that I'm very passionate about, and I took up an accelerated, not accelerated, but a more in-depth role, more hands-on, helping children in like CPS custody. And so I've got my first case. I've had it for like almost a year now. It's been an amazing experience for me. But my coordinator told me, Joe, you've gone above and beyond. It's really amazing. And instantly I would go, uh-oh, you know, in my head, like I've gone above and beyond. My codependency is flaring, you know, and so I still have, it's not, but I have that in the back of my mind of, am I doing too much? Where do I end? Where do they begin? And I've learned all that from that. Like you talked about the self-esteem and the needing to be the control. And I've learned that control looks very different in depending on who it is. I wasn't like a angry controller, like a drill sergeant, but it had to be my way. And I wanted, and you had to do what I needed you to do so that I could feel okay. And sometimes it looked very gracious and looked, the trouble, a lot of this, the challenge for me is that my will in my head looks and sounds great. You know, that the end result will be amazing and we'll all be happy and everything will work out perfectly. But what it looks like in reality is a lot of pain, suffering, and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, my intentions, so to speak, always seemed like they were good. And so it was hard for me to kind of just not decipher where my will was, where God's will was, where I was controlling, where I wasn't. But I learned all that in Al-Anon, and sometimes I've been in Al-Anon now 10 years as of last month, I think, or 9 years as of last month. And my sponsor just told me the other day, like, you do not get your feelings hurt like you did when you first came in. Everything hurt my feelings. I took everything personally. He goes, I can't even remember the last time I saw you get your feelings hurt. You just kind of roll with the situations and keep moving forward. And I look back to where I was, and sometimes I cringe at it, honestly, the way I was living my life. It's just kind of like my reaction to alcohol and drugs now. Like I don't want any of that in my life. result from now on. So it's amazing.
And you are going to be able to help a lot of other men. That's great. It's good to see you, Joseph. Okay, we've got
Bethany and Rebecca.
just a minute because our time's Bethany. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I had to sneak into the basement of my office to find a quiet place, but I have experienced in the last couple of weeks some codependent moments, and I call this my codependent crazy because I can feel it. I recognize what's happening. I can't always stop it, but it's like I know in my mind this is what's going on. These are not rational thoughts. This is, driven by something external to me. And so something that has been helping me is stopping myself in those moments and just saying, this is what's going on, calling a spade a spade. It happened a week or so ago. There's a homeless man in my town right now. And I just kept getting this feeling like that I was supposed to help him, that I was supposed to bring him some food. And I did that. And I took it too far. I was trying to do all of these things for him and solve all of these problems. And it's causing me a lot of anxiety. And when I finally stepped back and stopped helping, I was like, you're doing for him what he should be doing for himself. You're trying to fix his life, and that's not your job. God said, take this man some food. You did that. You're done. And so I just, over the past several days, I've just been, every time he comes to my mind, I'm like, God, I give you Drew, I give you this man. I hope the best for him. And if there's something more you need me to do, I want to hear it, and it's just this constant need to turn my life over to my higher power, to say, I'm doing the things that you want me to do. I'm not doing the things that I want to do. I'm not doing the things that I think are going to make me feel good or make me a better person. I'm doing the things that you're asking me to do. I'm walking through the doors that you open. I'm not taking a sledgehammer and busting a hole in a wall so that something happens, right? And so that's a really hard place for me to be, but it's like a constant practice. And it's what I tell my sponsees all the time. Recovery is a practice and a process. It takes time, and we're not good at it right away. We don't have these skills. We never learned how to deal with our emotions. We never learned how to have healthy boundaries with people. It's not something we know how to do. And so as I'm learning how to do it, it's like layers of an onion, right? I'm just peeling back more and more like, okay, here's a new thing. You've got to set healthy boundaries, even when you're asked to help,
Right. So good to see you and hear from you, Bethany. Our time is almost up. One of the things I wanted to announce to you is I'm doing a talk on a Zoom call Saturday and would like to invite y'all. It's out of California. It's an all addictions meeting. I got on it Saturday to see what it was. It's a great meeting, some long-term people on there, and they talk about all addictions. And so would love y'all to join me. I'll speak for a little while. But it's Saturday at 12:30, and it's on emotional sobriety. And if you and I think Cam's going to post it. Is that
It's
right?
already up. I just sent it to their chat box.
Okay, good. I would y'all come join me so I won't be with those California people all by myself. I'm teasing my friend Nancy there. She's my new California friend. So I want to announce the subject for next week, and it's called How Can I Get Through to You? And communication is the key. A lot of times we either over talk or under talk, and usually they're married. So it's about, join us next week about how can I get through to you? We so want people to hear us. And so that's what we're going to be talking about is communication. And so Brittany, Rebecca, we're out of time, but I hope you'll be here next Wednesday and can talk then. And it's so good to see you. We've been missing you. I've been missing all of you. And good to have Karen on and Tiffany. It's good to see Tiffany on here. And all righty, so we will see y'all next week. Thanks all of you for showing up. Hope you'll be there Saturday, so I won't be there by myself. Y'all join me. Jenny, it's wonderful seeing you. I love seeing pictures of those boys. They are beautiful, gorgeous. So good to see you. All righty, hope to see all of you Saturday. All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, Jenny.
Text
Bye.
me or email me if you need that information or you misplace it. Be blessed and have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.